Therefore, Yamamuni Akwaba, a Melodies Podcast YouTube channel. So, Yenim, Ayawaso West Wagon in Sema, ACC. Na nkrofo bebre ekasa political parties bebre eba bonten ebekasa fa Ghana for bebre international community obia eba bonten ebekasa efa ho na we ema eye mampanyin etenase SRT up commission of inquiry into commission of inquiry no de omo ye ne se omo hwehwe asem ni mu omo tutu nkrofo ano na trese omo ehu ne kra esi ye fi se wa wodem se bibi se ba MPP for wo monsem NDC for so e wo monsem na nipa ba ko a ye assaulting no and the video e call viral a ye nua ye hu ye MP ye for ningo pram Sam George and din ankasa ye Sam Jata George na yes and there Sam George call a commission of inquiry in him and now wako kan nsem nia na wo hwe Twitter sisia me ne wokasa Sam George din trendy at #1 because nkrofo gidi say nsem na okan no he was very vivid na say wo hwe nsem na wokan nsem ni mu ye pa nkrofo say na Sam George oh you very good storyteller because who tie nsem na wokan echi for obo say o ma vivid sequence of events at a year ewo Ayawaso West Wagon by election violence no the year no internet here for yankofa Sam George ne numensem nsem o country commission for no
and was working with DSP Azugu. When I approached DSP Azugu again, I asked him what his men were going to do behind the building. And I went back to him because I believed, based on his order to the men when they were trying to arrest Mamifwa, that they complied with, that he was in control. This time, I kept gesticulating and telling him the men were going there, and he just waved it off with a brush of the hand and said nothing is going on. When I realized that I wasn't getting ahead with this time, I decided to follow up myself and get there to see what was happening. I followed the trail of men and ended up at a place which I found out at that point to be the residence of the NDC candidate in the elections, Kwesi Delali Brimpong. Before that, I didn't know that he even had a house in close proximity to the building, to the polling station. Upon getting there, I saw between 30 and 40 of these heavily armed masked men, all in NSC emblazoned black t-shirts and khaki trousers. I didn't take notice of men wearing the uniform of the Ghana Police Service at that scene. And then I also saw a crowd of about 30 to 40 men and women. Some of the women were carrying children. And there appeared to have been a standoff between these two crowds that I met. I approached and tried to get in between to find out what was going on. Some of the men in the crowd noticed me and recognized me and said, "Honorable, they've come and they are trying to intimidate us and they've seized our key." I asked, "What key?" He said, "One of the men, this national security, in fact, they said one of these invisible forces has seized our keys." When I turned around, I noticed the gentleman from the national security that I described earlier, who works at the Kotoka Lounge of the VIP, whom I know or I had encountered previously and know to be called Double. That is the name I know him by, Double. At that location, many of the men who were in the emblazoned t-shirts were carrying sidearms, pistols, and many of them were either or unmasked, and they were wearing the NSC emblazoned t-shirts. Double, like I've indicated already, was dressed differently and carrying an AK-47 assault rifle. I approached him this time because DSP Azugu, again for the records, was not at that scene. I approached Double and engaged Double in a conversation and said to him, "Tell your guys to go back. You have no business in the residence of the NDC candidate today. What are you doing here? And he said to me, his men will not pull back if the crowd didn't go into the house. I told him, Double, your request is unreasonable. This is the residence of the NDC candidate in the election. Let your people go back. Whilst all of this conversation was going on between myself and Double, there were various bits and pieces of scuffles going on between the crowd and the marksmen. Then I said to him, they say you have a key. Give me the key. It appears to be agitating a number of the men. He said to me, he doesn't have a key, but he will find the key and give to me. But I should ask the crowd to maintain a line, and he and his men would make a retreat to their vehicles. I agreed to that. Whilst that conversation was going on, then a scuffle involving quite a number of the masked men and the crowd broke out this time, where blows were being thrown in the open. The next thing I heard, whilst trying to find my bearing, were warning shots, or were shots fired in the air. That is what I recall. Shots were immediately fired in the air. At that moment, there was a red pickup that was parked along the wall of Mr. Brimpong's house. And just next to that red pickup was a space, an opening in the wall. I immediately took cover against the wall and stood right against the wall, because the next 60 seconds appeared to be stuff out of an action movie. I saw these armed men pull out, a number of them pull out their side weapons, point in the crowd. The crowd had started dispersing as soon as the first shots were fired. But this time, I saw them point directly into the crowd, in the direction of the crowd, and fire. I saw Double also point his AK-47 and attempt to fire. The gun jammed. I saw him clear his chamber, reload the gun, and fire several rounds from his AK-47. My lord, recounting this leaves me a little traumatized, because this was live fire straight at unarmed Ghanaian citizens. I'm a member of parliament. I kept screaming for it to stop. After about 60 seconds, and what appeared to me to be well over 40 shots fired, the firing ceased, and Double gave the order for the men to retreat, and the retreat began. But he was the last man behind, and he beckoned to me to walk with him to their vehicles for the keys. And he asked me to stand by him and walk with him. This was what took me back to the polling station, the Labaoleshi polling station. Anybody who's visited the scene would testify that there is a building between the school and where the premises of the candidate is, which has a short wall, so we all jammed over the wall, some uncompleted building of some sorts. By the time myself and Double got into that building, I realized a young man in white t-shirt and brown trousers was being accosted by about 5 of the men who were ahead of Double. All I remember seeing was that he was struck by, I can't remember whether it was a gun or a button, but I realized he fell to the ground. These officers, these 4 to 5 men, continuously kicked in the head and in his body parts whilst he lay on the ground. I saw one of them pick a concrete block and attempt to smash it into the man. I kept screaming, "Double, stop your men. This is wrong." He told me to shut up, that it wasn't my business. And I said to him, "I'm a member of parliament. This is wrong." And he asked me if I knew what a stray bullet was. At that point in time, I shut up. I saw this individual in the white t-shirt and brown trousers lying motionless, bleeding from his mouth and his nose. As I made my way out, I saw the Deputy National Women Organizer running into the scene and crying, "Wome kuno, to wait, they've killed him, they've killed him." At the time I left with Double, the gentleman was motionless and bleeding from his mouth and his nose after I had seen him being kicked repeatedly on the floor. When we got to the vehicle, Double walked with me outside the premise of the building because his vehicle was outside the premise. I asked him for the key and he said to me he had no key to give to me. He will find the key subsequently and I will get it. As we walked to his car, Mr. Roland Walker of Joy TV was attempting to grant me an interview, and I said to him to hold on, and he kept asking me what had gone on. I said, hold on, I need to sort this out and I'll be back to you. When I went and I was told that there was no key to give to me, this was now in the open glare, it was not in that confine of the small building. I then started repeating to the men, this is so wrong, this is so wrong. You can't kill a man in his own house. This is so wrong. No matter how long it takes, justice will be served. This is so wrong. I was walking away, and I said that on the video you showed. As I walked away, my name was called twice. I met in one of the vehicles. Sam George, you think you're so strong? You see what we'll do to you. At that point, I turned around and asked, what will you do to me? Are you a security officer or a party agent? My Lord, I will repeat again for emphasis, the conversation or the dialogue, the entire dialogue between myself and the officers in the vehicle. My name was called out. Sam George, you think you are so strong? We would deal with you. At this point, I turned around and addressed the officer in the vehicle and asked him, what will you do? Are you a police officer or a party officer? These were my questions to them. I said nothing more than that. The last thing I remember being said to me from the officer in the vehicle was, this is the beginning of 2020. Wallahi. Then I noticed a gentleman standing to my left was hit by one of the security operatives standing there. I was trying to understand what was going on when another officer dressed in black, who I have gone ahead to identify as Mohammed Sule, the son of the late Nantonna and an operative of the national security apparatus who was on operation that day, assaulted me. He hit me the first time, and I approached him back and asked him, why are you hitting me? What is my offense? And he hit me a second time. There were uniformed police officers on the scene. Their only intervention was to pick up a mobile phone of the national security operative that had fallen down, and not to protect me, a citizen, an armed citizen of the Republic of Ghana. What was going on? From the corner of my eye, I noticed second national security operative, this time dressed in black, the black top and the khaki trouser, and wearing a bulletproof vest. He was also masked, jump and hit me from the side in the neck. So when I hear testimony that suggests that I was assaulted by one man, my lords, the evidence and video, your video you showed, contradicts that position. At least 2 officers from the national security assaulted me. At this point in time, I had to make a split-second decision. Kneel down there and say my last prayers or take flight. Gunshots again. In all honesty and sincerity, my conclusion was, in all honesty, my conclusion, those shots that were being fired at me. So I was running in a straight line when I heard the shots. Maybe I've watched one movie too many. I realized that I shouldn't run in a straight line, so I took a detour instead of running straight. That took me into the building that housed the polling station, the 3-story building. When I ran into that building, I ran into a room on the ground floor. When I entered there, I saw a man who was hiding in that room also, wearing a City FM reporter's jacket. I saw an EC officer, and I saw the ballot box inside that room, because polling had ended with the violence going on at the station. The EC officer had carried the ballot box and ran into that room. From that room, I saw some recordings being taken of what was going on outside in the park. At this point in time, it appeared to be a free-for-all, beat anyone you can see. People who were there, who were onlookers, people who were probably coming to vote, anybody who was present, who was not attired like them, was assaulted. Then I saw a team, some of the armed marksmen, towards the building. I was on the ground floor. I decided to run to the top of the building. When I ran to the top of the building, I noticed that the men were shouting my name and checking the offices on the ground floor, or the rooms on the ground floor. It appeared to be a search for me. At this point, I picked out my phone and did a Facebook post. It could be the last post I may have made if those men had laid hands on me, and said, I have been assaulted and I've been shot at, and this is what is happening at ṛẹța ẹạḻṣ. In no time after my post was done, with the men on the second floor at the time, they halted the search. Descended the building, went into their vehicles, and they started leaving the place. I stayed in that building for about another 10 minutes to be sure that the coast was clear before I descended. I got down. I was bleeding from my hands. I had been hit a number of times by I don't know what in my back whilst I took flight. And so I proceeded to the residence of Mr. Delali. There, I noticed that there were splatters of blood, several pools of blood on the floor. And the people there, Honorable, see what they've done to us. They shot people, see bones. And I saw what appeared to be fragments of human bones there. So then I said to them, bring stones and let us cordon off this area. If the police comes, they will see what are supposed to be evidence at the crime scene. Then one of the men, Honorable, they were shooting us. They shot us with guns, live bullets. And he brought me a shell casing. He showed me a shell casing. I had been there and witnessed the shooting. So when he brought the shell casing to me, I asked the gentleman around to go around and pick as many shell casings as they could. And my lord, whilst I waited, they brought me those shell casings, which I have with me in the same rubber bag that in which it was brought to me. My lord, I'm going to arrange them. My My Lord, there are two different types of shell casings that were brought. And this is what the gentleman picked and brought to me before I left. In fact, this in itself is a round. Forgive me if my hands are shaking, but my Lord, here, this appear to be, from the markings on them, 9mm shell casings. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 of those shell casings.